Welcome to Wager Talk, everybody. I'm Scott Spreitzer here with Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin, all from WagerTalk.com. And we're talking a little Big Ten football with some national title implications when Michigan travels to Madison to take on Wisconsin. The Badgers open 8, currently a 7.5-point home favorite. And Ralph, if Wisconsin wins out, they're in the playoffs, I think. I mean, you got Clemson and Miami. One of those two teams are going to be out after the ACC title game. The issue that has kind of held Wisconsin back is that they've had one impressive win. That came last week against the Iowa Hawkeyes, who were fresh off the big win over Ohio State. So they did move up a few spots, but you got to factor that in, I think, when you're making your top 4. But if they win out, they get to the postseason. Here's the thing, though. Can they get past Michigan and cover that 7.5-point spread?
Well, you really wouldn't think we're going to talk about quarterbacks because you have Brandon Peters making his third start against Alex Hornibrook, but really it's whichever quarterback plays better, and I say that because Brandon Peters is only making his third start. And in the first 2 games at Maryland and against Minnesota, he was 9 of 18 and 8 of 13 because they could rush the ball and he wasn't forced to pass. Now against the Wisconsin defense, he will be forced to pass. So that's the first question. But when I look at Alex Hornibrook, he started off the year with an 8-1 ratio playing Utah State, Florida Atlantic, and BYU. Wisconsin's been a double-digit favorite every Big Ten game, and Hornibrook has a 9-11 ratio in conference play. That scares me, laying over a touchdown against a solid defense.
You know, the interesting thing last week was I think Wisconsin went into that game with a major chip on their shoulder.
Sure.
Now, it doesn't matter. We might think Wisconsin's on, 15th best team in the country. It doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, except the Wisconsin players, who I'll guarantee you, last week, we're unbeaten, and they got us 8th. Well, that's motivation for a team right there. That's disrespect. Now they moved up to number 5, and I think they might be looking at this and saying, okay, now all we got to do is stay clean. So it's a little bit of a changing role from last week where I think they went out with that disrespected Rodney Dangerfield type mentality to this week where they now have a lot of pressure on them. Now it's like, okay, we've put you in a position where if you guys go out and perform and win your games, you're going to be in the playoff. I agree with what you said. There's no way they'll be kept out if they win the Big Ten championship. That said, and I really don't like that situation, particularly for Wisconsin. That said, I just don't like this Michigan team. I haven't really liked them all season. They handled Florida, which has been a mess from day one. Early in the season, Florida had 18,000 guys out for that game, and we found out later that their coach is nuts.
It's true.
Something was going on. We just didn't know at the time, obviously. And some of their other games to me have been less than impressive. And then, of course, there have been a couple of games that have just been bad for Michigan. I think Wisconsin's just the better squad here. Playing at home, reasonable number. I'd have to go that way. It's not going to be a play on my card. It's not a strong opinion. But I would play Wisconsin here.
We're both of the run-first variety when it comes to college football, and you can see this season in the NFL taking suit also to run that football. Look at what New Orleans did last week against Buffalo, 2-to-1 run ratio to pass ratio for the most part. Both of these teams are one-dimensional. You mentioned what Hornibrook's done after the schedule got a little bit tougher. We know Brandon Peters might not be ready for prime time yet, but Wisconsin's outrushed their last 2 opponents by about 400 yards. How much do you put into the fact, Ralph, for instance, that Michigan gave up 5.5 yards per carry last week? I mean, they won the game. It looks good on the scoreboard, 35-10 over the Terps. But they got outgained in that contest, and they gave up 5.5 yards per carry.
That concerns me as much as, not being able to stop the run is one issue. But what concerns me even more is the way they've played on the road. Against Maryland, Penn State, and Indiana, 16, 16, and 17 first downs. That doesn't get it done at Wisconsin against a team that can run. So Michigan, again, gave up those yards last week, but this is the first physical offensive line they had where they're actually going to get beat down into the second half. We'll see if they have the depth. We know they only returned 1 starter this year on the defensive side. While the starters have been great, their depth hasn't been pushed much. The depth in the front 7 will get pushed this week.
Dave,
one
final
other
thoughts.
thing to factor in here is, there aren't many good games this week. It's an awful, considering it's the week 11. It's kind of an awful schedule. But this is one place where the atmosphere is going to be electric. Game day is going to be there. All the talking heads, the big stars from ESPN. It's probably the biggest game in the schedule, and we know that stadium. I've never been there personally, but I swear I can feel it rocking when it gets
They're
excited.
playing jump after the third quarter. You're
telling you,
jumping too?
It's going to be a charged-up atmosphere, and I think that does favor the Badgers.
Camp Randall, the Badgers 8-1-1 against the spread the last 10 times in this series. And speaking of college football, we've got a great situation going on and a great package at wagertalk.com in college football. Rest of the college football season is what I'm giving away, including the bowls, for just $195. We've gone 39-21 with a couple of pushes. That's 65% against the spread this season. Going back to last year, we're now on a 95-69 run. That's 62% against the spread in college football. And in the bowls last year, we cashed over 70% against the spread. And all those plays released at wagertalk.com. $195, the rest of college football, including the bowls. And don't forget about a 7-day all-access package for anybody at wagertalk.com for only $99. Stick around. Dave, Ralph, and I, more to come. College football, also a little college basketball talk coming up a little bit later right here on Wager Talk TV.